This is ILM Circle, a learning workshop presented by the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona, or ISBA. ILM stands for Intentional Learning for Mutual Respect, the foundation of what ISBA is all about.
Welcome to all of you. My name is Michelle Marion, and I am one of the volunteers for the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona. And I'm really pleased to welcome everybody tonight. We have a really exciting topic and a wonderful speaker. She's been with us a couple of times before, and we're so grateful that we can welcome her back. I do have a couple of upcoming ISBA events that I want to point out. I'm going to put the links for registration in the chat, but we have a tri-faith discussion, Living Our Faith, on August the 5th. So that is just right around the corner. I'll put the link for the registration in the chat. And then we also have an ISBA youth event coming called Gutter Games for Bowlers. That is on August the 23rd, which is a Saturday from 2 to 4. And I also will put the link for that particular event so you can register your children for that. I'll put that in the chat just now. I do want to take a really quick moment and acknowledge our co-founder and executive director, Asra Hussein. She has received, and the event is scheduled for September, but she has received the Golden Rule Award from the Arizona Interfaith Movement. And so on Thursday, September 4th at the Tempe Center for the Arts, she will be receiving this award for all of the work that she has done for the ISBA. And I think we all are so grateful for her co-founding of this organization and then support of this organization for the last several decades. I can't think of a more deserving person for the Golden Rule Award. So I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge that. As I said, our guest speaker tonight has been with us a number of times. And Rabbi Ilana Kanter is with us to speak about the Ashkenazi, the Sephardic, and the Mizrahi Jews, both the similarities and the differences. And so if you have questions throughout the presentation, if you want to put them in the chat or raise your hand, we do need to be respectful of Rabbi Kanter's time so that she can get to all of the details of her presentation. And then we'll also reserve time at the very end for more questions. But please feel free to put things in the chat or raise your hand, and then we will take care of unmuting you and have a delightful presentation and evening with Rabbi Kanter. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's an honor always to be here. But I just want to join you in congratulating Azra on what the Islamic Speakers Bureau has done for the Phoenix community, Phoenix, Scottsdale. They've really enriched the life of the whole community. So thank you, Azra. Tonight's topic are different kinds of Jews. And I think a good way to think about these differences in Jewish groupings, which is different from other groupings, I'll allude to that in a moment. These are like ethnicities within Judaism. So they share certain things. All of the core prayers are the same. All of the holy books are the same. And then starting in about the 15th, 16th century, there are books for the different communities. So there's a law book for a Jewish law book for the Ashkenazi community, and a Jewish law book for the Sephardic community, because there are some slight differences. So we're gonna try to tackle this. The groupings that you may have heard before, Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox, they are different. And really, the way to think of them is, particularly in America, as all parts of the Ashkenazi group. Except people who took on, except if you decided, well, I'm going to be Sephardic or I'm going to be Mizrahi, or you married somebody. But really, I'm sorry, Conservative, Reform, and Orthodox, those denominations are within the Ashkenazi community and not in the Sephardic and the Mizrahi community. So that's just by way of introduction, and now we'll get to the good stuff. So these different groupings come from different areas of the world, and different experiences, different historic experiences. So starting with the Ashkenazim, I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, and my grandfather came from Germany, and my other grandfather came from Eastern Europe. Those places, starting around the 10th, 11th century, Germany, parts of France, and then going to the rest of Eastern Europe, so Russia and Lithuania and Ukraine, that is the area that Ashkenazi Jews come from. And so most everybody in this country who is an Ashkenazi Jew will, it's usually somewhere near Russia that their grandparents or great-grandparents arrived from, or Germany. The German Jews came to the United States before the others, but all of those are Ashkenazi Jews. The Sephardic Jews, the Sephardic Jews came to be in an interesting way. So there were various exiles of the Jewish people from the land of Israel. So we had the Babylonian exile, which was we were sent to Persia. And so we've had other times in our history where we've been exiled from the land of Israel. And so Jews were in Persia, and they were in, and they kind of migrated to various places. But there were Jews in Spain and Portugal. And in 1492, when the Inquisition was going strong in Spain, the Jews were exiled from Spain. So in 1492, all of Spanish Jewry, all of Portuguese Jewry, unless you wanted to be like, some people became like secret Christians. I mean, they converted to Christianity so that they wouldn't get killed or burned at the stake. But they stayed in Spain and Portugal and just kind of like did their Jewish things in a basement or, in secret, that kind of thing. But so Sephardic Jews come from Spain and Portugal, and then they went they went across the pond to North Africa. So various places in North Africa, and Italy. And so the Sephardic Jews basically come from those areas, particularly Spain and Portugal. And then Mizrahi Jews they're not quite a subset of Sephardic Jews. They come from a different area, but they're much more like Sephardic Jews than they are Ashkenazic Jews. So Mizrahi Jews come from parts of North Africa, but also the Middle East and other parts of Africa. And they were there also as, again, based on the exiles and where Jews had to migrate to. But just to kind of sum up, Ashkenazi Jews, Central and Eastern Europe, Sephardic Jews, Spain, Portugal, North Africa, and Mizrahi Jews, parts of North Africa and the Middle East. So that's basically the geographic differences of where these groups originated from. And because they came from different places, one of the keys to Jewish survival has been to kind of absorb parts of the culture around them, and to take in what is good and what feels holy, and kind of incorporate it or weave it into Jewish life. So Spain, of course, is a very different place from Germany. And so the customs and the culture, of course, was different. And the parts of that culture that were woven in to these groups of Jews counted for their differences. And, oh, okay. I thought somebody was asking a question. Okay. Okay, so they have different kinds of music. You know how Middle Eastern music is going to differ from European music. So you will have that in differences between Ashkenazi Jews and Mizrahi Jews and Sephardi Jews. The prayer books that we pray from, again, the core prayers are the core prayers are the same. But if you look in a Sephardic prayer book, you'll have all sorts of words that you don't have in the Ashkenazic prayer book. Again, sort of the basic prayer service is the same, but where a blessing in Ashkenazi form would be like, let's say 5 words. The Sephardim would maybe add adjectives and things like that. And so it would become 7 words or 8 words. So often Ashkenazi Jews, when they walk into Sephardic synagogues, sometimes they're a little bit lost if they've never encountered that prayer book. But so the prayer books are different. There are some small discrepancies in Jewish law, and I'm going to get to that. Of course, the music and the food, again, based on those regional differences, are going to be different. And so they have their own foods, their own music, their own prayer books, and again, also based on the points of origin. Actually, Michelle, if you can, I'm not actually looking actively at the chat, but if a question comes in, feel free to, pause me in. Okay. So in Ashkenazi Jewry, there developed a language that was a kind of combination of Hebrew, German, that was called Yiddish. That's not the same as Hebrew. So somebody who lived in, let's say, Eastern Europe might speak Yiddish, in everyday life, but would pray in Hebrew. So Yiddish comes from the Ashkenazi culture. Sephardic culture, again, based on the points of origin. Sephardic culture actually had different ways of different kinds of pronunciation of the same language that Sephardic Jews had. I'm sorry, the same language that Ashkenazic Jews have. They have different pronunciations of words. And then Mizrahi Jews, because they came from Arabic countries, so they developed this kind of Judeo-Arabic. That's what I missed. This kind of Judeo-Arabic. So some of their texts might be written in those. Yes, I was going to say about Sephardic Jews. Sephardic Jews made a kind of combined language like Spanish and Portuguese and things like that with Hebrew, and that's the language that we call Ladino. So different languages: Ashkenazi, Yiddish, Sephardim, Ladino, and Mizrahi have the Judeo-Arabic, and then all of them have Hebrew as the basic language of prayer and the language of holy texts. So I want to start with why don't we start with a couple of the differences in Jewish law. I'm blessed that my daughter married a Sephardic Jew. And he's a Sephardic Jew where his grandparents came from Morocco and some came from Egypt and so on. So I had a new grandchild. So I went to be with them to participate in the circumcision of our new grandson. And because it was done in the Sephardic way, there were elements to that circumcision ceremony that I had never seen before. So I would ask my son-in-law's, parents, what does this mean? What does that mean? Found the whole thing very, very intriguing. But all Jewish babies are circumcised all Jewish baby boys traditionally are circumcised on the 8th day. So that's the same. But again, some of the prayer service connected to it will be different. And then probably one of the most famous differences in Jewish legal practice between Ashkenazic and Sephardic Jews comes on Passover. And again, because Passover is so much about food, it's about the matzah and it's about the bitter herbs, and it's a home-based, the Seder is a home-based ritual, and it's very much about these symbolic foods. Well, again, if you come from a place that is, about spices and doesn't have potatoes, or doesn't have, certain foods. So for example, some Ashkenazic foods that you might be familiar with are based on the fact that they came from areas that were cold climates. So some of the things that they, ate were onions and carrots and cabbage. And you may have heard of this matzo ball soup that it's a kind of chicken soup, but with these kind of dumplings, I guess you would call them, and noodles and meats. All of these are very much part of Ashkenazic culture. And you may have heard of a Jewish food called kugel. I think it's a Yiddish word. Kugel is like a kind of casserole with noodles as its base, usually. And again, all of these, because of what they were the kinds of foods that they ate. Right. Okay. So, and now we go to the Sephardic Jews and the Mizrahi Jews, and they're living in places, as I said, North Africa, Persia, wherever they are. And those communities know about spices. Their foods are these, wonderfully spiced foods. And they have things that European Jews didn't have. So they have olives and they have dates. So you'll see those in different, on different like Sabbath meal tables or holiday meal tables. And I kind of got away from where I was going because it was connected to food. So one of the differences legally between Ashkenazic Jews and Sephardic Jews has to do with Passover. Passover, traditionally Jews don't eat any leavened foods, so no bread and no kind of crackers and so on. But because of where the Sephardic Jews again came from, they eat rice on Passover. The Ashkenazi Jews do not eat rice on Passover because anything that, well, first of all, I don't know if they had rice, but if they had rice, anything that could be used to make flour, which could then be used to make like something that, fermented or rose or could be like a would not be appropriate for Passover. So they didn't eat that. So you have like a real difference because some Ashkenazi Jews who won't eat that whole, it's like a group of foods called kitniot, which are legumes. So they won't eat rice and chickpeas and lentils, a lot of grains. They won't eat on Passover. So if an Ashkenazi Jew goes to a Sephardi Jew's home during Passover, there may be things that she can't eat in that house during Passover. And there's also a couple of differences at weddings. I don't know if you've been to a traditional Jewish wedding. So in the Ashkenazic community, in traditional Jewish weddings, let's say the groom is under the canopy. The canopy we call a chuppah, and all Jews have a chuppah traditionally, but the groom will be standing under that canopy, and you might see the bride circling him like 7 times. And the idea is that they're creating sort of their own new world together. And 7 is a special number in Judaism, the 7 days of creation. And so they're kind of creating this new world by making this relationship official and so on. But that circling you won't see in the Sephardic and the Mizrahi communities. Let me see if I wanted to. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yes. But in the Sephardic communities, they, particularly for Mizrahi Jews, they do things like henna before their brides go to the canopy to be married. So they have those kinds of things, different kinds of clothing that people wear for special occasions. Okay, so what I want to do, I mentioned to Michelle that I thought this might be a nice way to kind of get a sense of the kind of cultural differences between the different groups. So there's a song that we sing on our High Holy Days, which happen in September. And the song says, Avinu Malkeinu, our father, our king, or our parent, our ruler. And it says, please have compassion on us because we don't really have so much to show you that we deserve your compassion, but we'd really like it if you did. So this song, Avinu Malkeinu, I chose that one. And I'm going to go to a website and I'll share my screen with you. And we'll hear how the Ashkenazic community sings it, how a Sephardic community sings it, and how a Mizrahi community sings it. So hold on 1 second, and I will. Okay, that's good. And now. Here it is. See if I can move that. There it is. Okay. Here it is. Good. So now go back and Move that out and share my screen one more time. Sorry about this. It's coming. We may just have to, well, let me try one more time. We may just have to listen to it, which is okay too, but I thought I wanted you to see the website as well. So let me see if it's appeared. Yes, there it is. Okay. Don't you love it when technology works? Okay, here we go. Okay, so here is this website, and it's called Piyut, piyut.org.il. Piyut is poetry, and it's a special kind of poetry that you would add during special occasions, like the high holidays, um, Passover and things like that. And this website gathered like all the different versions of every prayer, possible. It's really incredible. So the in this one, they have 20 versions of that Avinu Malkeinu. So the first one we're going to listen to is the Ashkenazic. So just kind of when you're listening to it, see sort of what it sounds like, and is it major, minor? Is it are the is it melodic, or is it more sort of throaty and so on. So we'll see if we can see the differences. Oh, here it is. Okay. Are you able to hear that?
Yeah, it started.
Started. Let's try it again. Yeah.
We're not getting any sound.
Okay. Let me try one last thing. I'm going to stop sharing, and I think I know what to do so that you're going to be able to. And then we'll get to the others. In a different way. So, Michelle, were you able to hear that?
It was for me, it was cutting in and out, but it could be my connection as well. Because of where I'm located, my internet is sometimes not as strong. But I don't know if anybody else could weigh in to see if they could hear, if you could unmute.
Yeah, for me, it was the same thing. It was cutting in and out.
Okay, yeah. So we heard bits, but we didn't hear like the whole, even like a whole sentence or anything.
Are you hearing it now?
Kind of cutting in and out.
So we're going to have to go to Plan C, which is I'm going to have to kind of sing it for you. So hold on one second. Let me just
Okay.
say goodbye to this website. Okay. So if I was gonna, the website would have done it much better than you'll hear it now. But it's a song, something like this. Avinu Malkeinu Ein Lanu Melech Melech Ela Ata. And then Avinu Malkeinu. Okay, so that is a sort of example of what it might sound like in the Ashkenazi community. In the Sephardic community, it might be something like this. Avinu Malkeinu. Imagine like a Middle Eastern kind of chanty, kind of a little bit wailing, but like they're able to do things with their throat that the Ashkenazim don't do. The Ashkenazim, it's much sort of flatter music, and the Sephardic music is much more Middle Eastern, kind of Arabic sounding. And so their prayers will sound like that. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to get it so that you could hear it, but that gives you a little bit of the idea of like how the music is different. Now there's a little bit of a dark side to the relationship between Ashkenazic and Sephardic Mizrahi Jews, which I want to mention. This is mostly in the land of Israel, because in Israel you have Jews from all over the world. And what I'm about to describe doesn't happen really at all in American Jewish life. So when Sephardic Jews and Mizrahi Jews, particularly Mizrahi Jews at one point were sort of kicked out of Arab lands or Persian, so let's say they're kicked out of Iran or they're kicked out of Morocco or, wherever it is. So they emigrate to the land of Israel. And they look different from Ashkenazi Jews. Ashkenazi Jews are coming from Europe. So Ashkenazi Jews are sort of very light white skin. And the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews, particular, they have this beautiful kind of olive skin. What you might expect in, coming from Arabic countries. Now these Jews had never before encountered each other until they met in the land of Israel. And the Ashkenazic community was not very welcoming to the Mizrahi Jews particularly. And in later years, now the Sephardic and the Mizrahi communities in Israel have really, pushed for, the kind of recognition that the Ashkenazim have had for a very long time. But this was an unfortunate, moment in Jewish history where you meet up with a difference, and I guess they didn't know so much how to handle it, or they didn't know how to appreciate it. That is much less true. I don't think actually it's true at all in American Jewish life. I think because it's mostly Ashkenazim in America, the idea of having some Sephardic Jews was like bringing in, richness to Jewish life. So I think it was a different kind of relationship. Let me see. I want to take some questions too. Let me just see. Is there anything I want to say before we go to some questions? Maybe we'll take some questions.
Okay. We have one question I've been kind of holding back on. Ahmad had asked earlier, are there different words for God between the three?
That's such a wonderful question. Now, the truth is that all of the names of God, and there are, let's say, I don't know, somewhere between 100 and 200. There's like, let me give an example of some of the differences. So you'll have the name of God, Adonai, which comes from the word Adonai, which means sort of master. But then you'll have Harachaman, the merciful one, or you have Tzur Yisrael, that's the rock of Israel. So you can see how there are differences in the names of God. In the Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Mizrahi communities, they have all the same names, but different communities emphasize different ones. So in some Ashkenazi communities, they use a Yiddish word for God, the Abisher, or they'll use the word Hashem, which is a way of not actually pronouncing the name of God because it's too holy, so we don't do it other than in prayer services. So this sort of, so when you want to say God, there's another word that you use. And in Sephardic and Ashkenazic, Sephardic and Mizrahi communities, they had tremendous poetry. So their use of the names of God sort of got into some of the ones that perhaps Ashkenazim didn't so much focus on. So, for example, let me think of an example. It's such a wonderful question. Thank you, Ahmad. Let's say one of the poems that Sephardic communities or Mizrahi communities may sing on the high holidays have the word let's say chonen, which means the gracious one. And they might use that word for something about in their poetry and kind of focus that way. So the names of God are all the same, but I think they appear in sort of different ways. And unfortunately I don't know Ladino and I don't know Judeo-Arabic to be able to tell you, like, okay, this is what, when you're singing a prayer in Ladino, this is the word that you might use. But there are those slight differences.
Thank you. If I may, I'd like to ask, because you had mentioned that your son-in-law is Sephardic.
Yes.
So in the blend now in your own family,
Yes.
Are there components that you are adopting from the Sephardic and he's adopting from the Ashkenazi because of the family relationship now?
That's also a wonderful question. So my daughter They eat rice on Passover, right? We do not eat rice on Passover. That doesn't mean I wouldn't eat in their home. I just wouldn't eat in the rice, right? So my daughter kind of like sort of swept herself into I mean, my son-in-law comes from this unbelievable Sephardi heritage, and she's kind of sort of entered into that culture. My grandson, it's actually in some traditional communities, Ashkenazi and Sephardi, you don't cut a boy's hair until he's 3 years old. So my grandson has this wonderful, wonderful hair, which will not be, he's 2, so he's got a lot of it, and it won't be cut for another year. The ceremony for the hair cutting is the same in both communities, but it has different names. In the Ashkenazi community, it's called an upshirin, which is a Yiddish word, and in the Sephardic community, it's called a chalakeh, and that's Hebrew for cutting. Same thing, same idea. But when I go to that ceremony, I'm going to be very curious to see if they do anything different other than the name of the ceremony. But your question, to move away from my family and talk about intermarriages between Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews, if they are on the extremely traditional side of things, the wife will do what the husband does, and she kind of leaves her traditions where they were, and she takes on the family of the husband. If they're sort of either more modern or more sort of pluralistic, they'll take aspects of both and use those in their in their Jewish lives. My mother was born in London, but she spent the first 7 years of her life in Holland. Now, Holland is has it's actually a Sephardic community, and so when one of the laws of keeping kosher is we differentiate between meat and milk. And traditionally, if you had a meat meal, you would wait somewhere between 3 and 6 hours before you put the milk in your tea. So you wouldn't have any dairy after the meat meal. In Holland, they only wait 1 hour between meat and milk. So my mother, being my mother of blessed memory, she adopted the 1 hour restriction as opposed to the 3 to 6 hour restriction. So, but another like small difference in Jewish legal practice between the communities.
And would it be typical in that type of blended family for, say, like we'll use your grandson for example, he would learn Ladino and he would also learn Yiddish phrases? Is that kind of a common thing? And on top of Hebrew, and I mean, I think the more languages you know, the better you are. But
Yes. So if my daughter knew Yiddish, maybe he'd learn some Yiddish, but she does not. She doesn't know Yiddish, and where Yiddish is most alive is in Hasidic communities, but it's also been incorporated into let's say American culture, but also the same in Israeli culture, where certain words from Yiddish have become American. Like, you know, you might say somebody has chutzpah. Chutzpah is a Yiddish word for nerve, you know. Wait, Michelle, remind me of your question, because I had something else I wanted to say.
Like would your grandson be learning Ladino?
Right. So yeah, so his so their heritage is Morocco and Egypt. So they come from this more Arabic uh, lineage. Um, and but I don't believe they know Arabic, um, except for maybe some words. Um, or if they encountered them in sacred texts. It was more, I guess, when the immigrants were, sort of fresh from those countries, that they brought their language with them, and it stayed in certain music and certain prayers. But there's no place where Ladino is actually spoken as the first language, but there is Yiddish in Crown Heights. Families speak to their kids in Yiddish. In some of the communities, some of the Orthodox Hasidic communities in Israel, they speak to their kids in Yiddish, even though Hebrew is all around them, and the kids get to know Hebrew too. But so my grandson he's learning Hebrew. My daughter speaks to him in English. So he'll have those two languages, and then we'll see whatever else he he takes in.
Well, that's wonderful. And we have a question from Sasha about the Jews in East Africa and India. Would they be the Mizrahis? And is there any kind of difficulties integrating into Israel, like a caste between the ethnicities?
Right. So Indian Jews are a whole other kettle of fish. um, because they come from where they come from. They have many customs that are different from all of those. Nothing like a caste thing. That part did not come with them. Um, uh, but I think, like, in Israel, they probably get mistaken as Mizrahi Jews until somebody says, "No, I come from India." But they also have some of their own customs. I'm not so familiar with them, though. But it's a wonderful question. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other questions? And please feel free to either unmute and ask your question or raise your hand. We can engage a little bit more personally. It doesn't have to always be through the chat.
Hmm. If there's something, um, unless if something comes in, just tell me. But what I was going to say, sort of I was actually. No, it's not going to work because the music didn't work. I had a 6-minute video that I was going to show that kind of summarized. Maybe I'll send it to Azra or to you, and you can send it out. It kind of summarizes a lot of what I've said tonight, but in a really kind of nice way, and it's visual, so that might be helpful. But the way that I think about it is, and this is my predilection, which is, I love to learn about the different customs that come to us. Me as an Ashkenazi Jew that come from Sephardic Jews or Mizrahi Jews. I love to learn about them, and because of where I stand on the sort of traditional spectrum, if it's something that I find, really meaningful. I'm trying to think of an example of a Sephardic custom that I've adopted, but I'm sure we have some. And it feels like it enriches, immeasurably. All Jews are enriched by all the others.
And I wanted to loop back to something that you had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation with regard to the Ashkenazi having the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox
Yes.
factions, but yet the Sephardic and the Mizrahi do not. Is there, like, I guess I would just say why?
No, it's a great question. Again, it comes from where those regional things. Ashkenazic Jews were very impacted by the division between the Catholic and the Protestant churches in medieval times. And so when Protestants separated from the Catholic Church, so they saw it in the culture around them, and some of the differences between Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform have to do with they may have their origins there, but say in this country, a lot of what differentiates them is their openness to the outside world. Those, in the very right wing of the community, try to remain kind of insular because they want to sort of hold on to their traditions and be able to teach their children and, hopefully transmit them. And might not, like, for example, in some parts of Orthodoxy, they might not let their children watch television or things like that. So less open to the modern world, more kind of trying to stay within their own community to kind of sustain it.
Thank you. That helps a lot. And so if you have a second and could get us that link, we can post it in the chat for that little 6-minute film.
Yeah, let me.
While everyone's here, and then we'll have that for their reference.
Oh, great. Okay, hold on just one second. Because it's right here. Oh, I'm going to have to send it to you, Michelle. It's not where it's supposed to be.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, no worries. So do we have other questions from our guests tonight?
Let me see if there's anything that I missed here. So this is something oh, thank you. This is something, a difference. I mentioned one of the differences in the wedding traditions. Another difference is, again, it's the same prayer service, but there's one point where you say 7 blessings. And in Sephardic communities, and my daughter had this experience when she was getting married, for a part, you come to the end and there are these 7 blessings. And during these 7 blessings, they put a prayer shawl around the bride and groom together. And that's a tradition that really comes from Sephardic and Mizrahi that you wouldn't have seen in an Ashkenazic wedding, unless somebody decided, oh, I like that custom and I'm going to bring it into when I do a wedding. Yeah.
So is you've talked about the food being influenced by the culture and the distinctions. And then is the music as well, especially like at wedding ceremonies and other holiday type celebratory events?
Yes. So the one difference that you'll see if you walk into an Ashkenazic synagogue versus a Sephardic synagogue, where in the Ashkenazic service, particularly at the beginning, the prayer leader might say the first line of a prayer and then do the rest silently, and then go to the next one and say the first line, do the rest silently, and everybody does that. The same prayers in a Sephardic synagogue would all be said out loud in a kind of chant. And so that experience would be very different. It definitely lengthens the service when you say every word out loud, but nonetheless, those are those beautiful differences. And you can find um, if I don't know if any of you have plans to visit New York, but if you should be so inclined, in New York, there's a very, very old Spanish and Portuguese synagogue. That's what it's called, the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue. And they are very sort of classical Sephardic. So if you went there on a Shabbat, you might see them doing kind of when one prayer leader is switching with the next one, like they'll bow to each other. I had never seen that before. And then one will go sit down and the same thing. And so they would do these things when I forgot really a big difference. If you go to a Sephardic shul, you will see the Torah scroll, which in an Ashkenazic synagogue, you put the scroll on the table and you read from the scroll as you go. In Sephardic synagogues, they have a kind of beautiful silver casing around the Torah scroll. And when they read the Torah, it's vertical. So they stand and the Torah is, and they're just looking at it eye level, as opposed to us, who are looking down in the Ashkenazic community. That's sort of a wonderful way of seeing the difference. Yeah.
And within the synagogues, is the architecture layout at all different?
Yes.
Because I was in a synagogue in Fez, Morocco, and it was very different from any synagogues, of course, that I've seen here. So I just was kind of curious.
Also a wonderful question. Very much so. That's one of the things where the communities took from the culture around them. And so the kinds of synagogues that you would see in, let's say you went to northern Israel and you went to a Sephardic synagogue, you might have the place where the prayer leader leads the prayers from in the middle of the synagogue, whereas in an Ashkenazic synagogue, they lead from the front. And you also might see the way that the synagogues are decorated. So in the buildings that come from the Arabic countries, they have this beautiful artwork, but very it has that flavor of of the Arabic cultures. And same with the Ashkenazic synagogues, from there.
And I want to point out to everyone in the chat, Sasha has shared some really lovely points about his family in Kerala, India, with a very large number of Jews in India and a great deal of religious diversity in Kerala. And then kind of a really neat similarity from the Hindu tradition. The bride and groom, as you said, go around the fire 7 times.
Oh.
So there again is that 7
Yes,
that is very similar.
Yeah. It's always so interesting when you get to go to, places abroad and to see, to see other, synagogues and what they look like and how different they are from, what I'm used to in this country. And it's just one of those things that makes you celebrate the diversity. It's really beautiful.
It's beautiful. So any final questions from any of our guests tonight? seeing anything coming in the chat or any hands coming up. Rabbi Cantor, thank you so much again for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge, and even a little bit of your family's personal history. We really appreciate the time that you've given to us tonight. And I want to thank all of our guests for joining us as well. At this juncture, we are kind of working on perhaps a ILM Circle for August, but we do have one scheduled for September 23rd, so we might not reconvene until September 23rd, but I will look forward to seeing all of you. And I second what Dorothy has said. Thank you, Rabbi Cantor. Thanks to all of you, and of course, thanks to Asra and the ISBA whole team for being able to host these wonderful presentations. We really, really appreciate everybody's time and sharing and to enrich our knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.